welcome to the Boardroom. On our show today, Brady Hoke fired. After much anticipation, Michigan interim athletic director Jim Hackett announced the move on Tuesday. And the search begins. Who will take over in place of Hoke, and will Hackett become the permanent athletic director? And finally, on the basketball court, Doyle dominating. The men's team getting help from an unlikely source and freshman forward Ricky Doyle. Welcome to the Boardroom. Simon Kaufman alongside Max Cohen and Max Boltman. Let's start with football. Obviously, the firing of Brady Hoke announced on Tuesday. After just 4 seasons, he's on the way out. What was his biggest shortcoming during his time here?
You know, I think the biggest shortcoming is that Michigan's record got worse every season he was here. I think that's what it ultimately comes down to. It's, in the end of the day, it's about wins and losses here. So, there were a lot of positive things. As Jim Hackett said, the players loved him, as was evident as they exited Schembechler Hall and based all of their tweets. But in the end of the day, if your football team gets worse every year, that's not acceptable.
I think you're absolutely right. And to take it a step further, he didn't really develop the highly touted players he was getting. So you're not getting wins and losses. And part of that is because you're getting these high-prize recruits, which, granted, he did. He had some great recruiting classes. But they're not materializing it as he maybe thought they would.
You guys were both at the press conference on Tuesday. You saw the players coming out after meeting with Hoke. What were the players' reactions on the way out and then some stuff on social media afterwards? It
was tough. They were not happy. Russell Bellamy was walking down. He had some words with the reporter who was in his face a little paparazzi action. Shane Morris was crushed. He had his head down the whole time, just kind of walking a straight path. A lot of hurt in their faces. Yeah,
I mean, you could just tell that there wasn't really a single person who was happy. It wasn't even nobody even looked like they didn't care. Every single person looked, upset, disappointed. I mean, this is a guy that they've spent, some of them in the past 4 years with almost every single day. So, that's hard to lose someone like that as a coach.
And obviously a lot of names coming out about who might be his potential replacement, a lot of hearsay. What do you guys think about who might take this job next?
I mean, I think Michigan would have to want Harbaugh right now. I mean, if you're Michigan, you have to, after how the last 2 coaching hires have gone out, they don't really have the option of getting this wrong. The program will always be relevant, but at the same time, you don't have 3 coaches in a row of 12 years where the team's not a huge factor nationally. This one they have to get right. So I would think Harbaugh would probably be their number 1 option, and they would have to get him if they want him.
I think Harbaugh is the number 1 option, but I also think if you wait that long until an NFL coach is done with their season, maybe some of the steam pours off of this train that's the momentum of a coaching search. I think maybe a better move in the short term, well, maybe not as good of a coach as Harbaugh, would be to look at a Les Miles or a Bob Stoops at LSU or Oklahoma, just because of 2 things. 1, the time factor. They can get this done in the next couple of weeks. 2, they've got recruiting classes they've already been in touch with. We've seen a lot of attrition from Michigan just in the past few weeks, and all season long, really. But Stoops or Miles have those contacts. They can try to rebuild that class.
I was just going to say that I think for Harbaugh, that I think that Michigan would have to feel confident that he would leave. I doubt what happened in the middle of a week, like you just said, but they'd have to feel confident that he would leave to make sure that those options were that they wouldn't be without a coach in mid-January.
Do you think Harbaugh would do that?
Wait till give them. I think that Michigan is probably very well in tune with who they could get at this point, realistically.
All right. Well, when Hackett announced the firing on Tuesday, it was just his second time taking questions from the media, and a lot of people really impressed with the way he handled the whole situation. What were your guys' takeaways from that press conference in terms of Hackett, and is this someone that might go from interim athletic director to full-time athletic director?
I was much more impressed with Hackett at the Hoke press conference than it was the first time, just because he kind of reversed tune a little bit in some ways. If you look at the subtext of his speech, the first time he spoke and fielded questions, he kind of was saying, how Michigan, he displayed a little bit of that arrogance that a lot of people have felt has kind of been Michigan's downfall in a lot of ways, thinking they're better than everyone else. But then the second time, he kind of acknowledged, with the whole Michigan man thing, that, Michigan needs maybe some change or something to get it right. And it's about getting it right, not necessarily being Michigan and every single little thing. It has to be Michigan, that there are different ways to go about things, that he needs to get it right. And to your second question about him possibly being the permanent athletic director, I would think with most of the possible coaches that it would be nice to have the assurance that they know where they're working for at least a year or 2. I think it would be very disconcerting for a coach to say, let's say they hire a coach in late December, early January, and then have a new athletic director, a new boss in March. I don't think most coaches would be in favor of that.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented for an athletic director to work under no contract without that interim title. So, Hackett could work. He could be, getting a salary while he's there without having been made official athletic director for any prolonged period of time. So I think Hackett made the impression on Tuesday that he's fully capable of being the long-term athletic director, but how long he wants to do it doesn't seem clear to me. But that press conference was powerful. He seemed to end it on a mic drop, talking about the Michigan man, phrase that we've heard so much throughout this last year. Talked about how he wanted to get rid of it, which is, I think, something that a lot of Michigan fans really wanted to hear from him. And the way he did it was great. He spoke really well. Very intelligent guy. Clearly knows a lot about business. He was the CEO of Steelcase. This is a guy that, if Michigan wanted to keep, I think it would be in very good hands.
All right, well, shortly after the Hackett press conference on Tuesday, there was another non-football Michigan athletic event going on. The men's team getting their first marquee win against Syracuse and getting some help from an unlikely source in freshman forward Ricky Doyle. One of the big questions before the season was who was going to own that big man position. Last year you lose McGarry, you lose Horford, you lose Jordan Morgan. And, Coach Beilein was kind of in a flux about who would take that over. What are your takeaways from how Doyle has stepped up so far this season?
Well, I'll be honest. I thought it was going to take until a few games into the Big Ten season to see some separation at that center position. But it came through against Syracuse. Max Bielfeldt and Mark Donnell, as capable Division I players as they are, they couldn't handle Rakeem Christmas in the paint. And it wasn't even that Doyle was bodying them because there wasn't a ton of physical contact. He just seemed more energetic and more aware on both ends of the floor. Now, granted, he is not getting defensive rebounds at a very high rate, but his offensive boards are pretty remarkable.
No, that's one of the things that impressed me most about Doyle. Not necessarily that he's not going out there and dominating people, but the fact he seems very aware on the court. There have been a lot of times where he's either tipped out balls, maybe drawn a foul, a tough foul, gone up strong to draw those fouls, that I think is very impressive for a freshman. He doesn't seem to be intimidated no matter who he's going against.
And another person making a strong case for getting themselves in the lineup is Spike. He played a huge role the other night with Derek Walton coming off the toe injury. Didn't get the start, but carried the load for the most part from the point guard position. Is this something where Beilein's going to have to think about reconfiguring that point guard setup at all?
I don't think it's necessarily an issue at the point guard position because I think both of them are so capable and there's no really qualms about who's in there. It's not like, Spike played great last game, but it's not like Walton's a slouch either. So I think that he could really go either way and be safe and maybe ride the hot hand like he did the other night.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where he can do it pretty situationally. When you can have a lineup where you go both guards, Albrecht and Walton, and then you can go Levert, Irvin, Doyle, that's a good lineup as long as you're not playing a really big team like a Syracuse. And you're going to see some big teams in the Big Ten that might not be an option against, say, a Wisconsin. But I think he's got some freedom to give Spike 20, 25 minutes a game without really decreasing Walton's minutes a ton.
All right, well, there you have it for Hoops. Hoke fired, Hackett starting to look for a new guy, and the men's basketball team hitting stride in their season. That's going to do it for us. This will be our final episode this semester, and next semester I'll be across the pond, so Max Boltman will be taking over, but the show is in good hands. Until next time, cheers.